They didn't even bother to lower their voices. Look at that. 5 foot nothing and navy blue. Must be here to teach us yoga stretches. A ripple of laughter moved through the Recon platoon like a wave. Gunnery Sergeant Hale stood in front of the formation, arms crossed over his barrel chest, eyes locked on the lieutenant who just walked into the Marine Special Operations training facility at Camp Lejeune. "Ma'am," he called, making the words sound like an accusation. "You sure you didn't take a wrong turn?" The public affairs office is across base. A couple of his Marines snickered. Others just watched, interested, the way men watch a car drifting toward a guardrail. Lieutenant Sofia Delgado stopped in the doorway. She was small, 5'2", maybe 5'3" in boots, compact build under her desert camis. Dark hair braided tight and coiled at the back of her head, rank glinting silver on her collar. She looked more like a logistics officer than someone who'd ever kicked a door. What they couldn't see were the knots of scar tissue on her shins from a decade of bare-legged conditioning. They didn't know she carried a 5th-degree black belt in Okinawan Goju-Ryu karate. They didn't know she'd once fought for her life in the dark hallway of a sinking freighter with nothing but elbows and knees when her rifle jammed. They only saw small, Navy, and officer. The room got quiet. 30 Marines in green shirts and fight shorts turned on their heels to look at her. Heavy bags swung lazily from chains bolted to the ceiling. The concrete walls radiated heat and the smell of old sweat and canvas. Sophia smiled, slow and almost polite. It was not a friendly smile. Somebody was about to learn something the hard way. The Marine Special Operations Combatives Bay was buried in the middle of the Lejeune training complex. Just another long, windowless building among many. No sign on the outside, just a number stenciled by the door. Inside, the main floor was covered in worn blue mats with duct tape scars. Focus mitts and tie pads hung from pegboards. There was a dent in the far wall where someone had misjudged a throw 5 years ago and left their opinion permanently embedded in the drywall. Lieutenant Sofia Delgado took it all in with one sweep of her gaze as she stepped fully inside, sea bag hanging from her right hand. She was 28. Her uniform was neat to the point of defiance. Her boots were broken in, not shiny. The only visible adornment besides the usual was a small braided cord looped around her right wrist, faded red and white. Her posture was deceptively casual, feet shoulder width, hands loose at her sides. If you knew what to look for, you could see the balance underneath it all. Weight centered, chin tucked, shoulders relaxed. A body that could uncurl into violence in half a heartbeat. Master Sergeant Donovan Briggs watched from beside the cage wall. Briggs was 42, built like a refrigerator with ears, with a voice that had been sandblasted by 2 decades of telling Marines when they were wrong. He'd read her file that morning. Bud/S grad, SEAL Team 7, 2 deployments. Commendation Medal with V. CQB instructor quals. Karate background extensive. On paper, she more than cleared the bar. He also knew paper didn't have to walk into a recon gym full of guys who did 6 pull-ups as a warm-up. He pushed off the wall and walked toward her. "Lieutenant Delgado," he said, offering a thick hand. "Briggs, I run this circus." "Good to meet you, Master Sergeant." Her grip was firm, no extra squeeze, no limp politeness. "Command wants cross-pollination," Briggs said. "Your people have some tricks. My people are supposed to steal them." A faint ghost of amusement touched her eyes. "I'll do my best not to break anything important." He caught and appreciated the "my best." No cocky, no apology. "Fair warning," he added, lowering his voice. "Recon, Raiders, they don't trust outside instructors. They especially don't trust the Navy. They will come for you. Hard. If they didn't," she said, "I'd wonder what was wrong with them." Behind them, Gunnery Sergeant Hale shifted his weight like he was gearing up for a sprint. Briggs saw it coming and almost sighed. Sofia Delgado grew up over a liquor store in National City, just south of San Diego, 5 miles from the bay and a world away from the tourist brochures. Her father, Carlos, ran a battered blue fishing boat out of a harbor that always smelled like diesel and salt. Former dock worker, former boxer, technically retired from both because of his knees and his temper. Her mother, Aiko, had come from Naha, Okinawa. At 20, trailing childhood karate and half a suitcase of Japanese books. She taught English in the local public schools, and Goju-ryu in a strip mall dojo squeezed between a pawn shop and a laundromat. Karate is not dancing. Aiko told Sofia the first day she stepped onto the scuffed hardwood floor at 6 years old. Karate is how small people survive big problems. Class started with basics. Always basics. Lower stances until her legs shook. Hundreds of straight punches into the air, then into the rough surface of the makiwara board screwed to a beam in the back. Kata again and again until the transitions blurred into something as automatic as breathing. Strike, breathe, retract, breathe. Her little fists split and bled. Aiko taped them, then made her keep going. Pain is a message, her mother would say. Listen, adjust, do not run away from it. Sparring didn't start until 12. When it did, it was full contact below the neck, no pads except mouth and groin. The first time a kick sent her skidding across the floor, Sofia's eyes watered and her lungs seized. She wanted to rip off her gloves and quit. Her father leaned in through the dojo door from the sidewalk, baseball cap pushed low, watching. Up, Mija, he said mildly. You don't know the ground anything. She got up. She kept getting up. By 16, she was sweeping grown men with hips and timing instead of power. Her competition trophies, few, because her mother didn't chase tournaments, collecting dust on a shelf she didn't dust. At 17, her father didn't come back from the harbor. Heart attack on the boat. No one's fault. These things happen. She cleaned the kitchen 3 times that night because sitting still felt like drowning. There was no folded flag, no uniforms at the door, no speeches about sacrifice. Just a cheap coffin, a handful of fishermen, and her mother sitting straight in a black dress, hands folded and pale. He'd always talked about the Navy, about the SEALs, specifically with a mixture of awe and profanity. Those guys, he'd say, shaking his head, swim all night, run all day, no gracias. She enlisted 6 months after graduation, not to honor him in some cinematic way, because she understood, at a bone-deep level, that she was useless at half measures. If she was going to go, she'd go all in. Blood/S stripped a lot of things off her. Softness, vanity, the illusion that she could do everything alone. They tried to strip her out, too. The Pacific at 2 in the morning didn't care that she was 5'2" and female. The boats on heads didn't care that her shoulders were already on fire. The instructors absolutely did not care that she'd stepped off the bus with a black belt and calloused fists. As far as they were concerned, everyone was equally in proven meat. She found out quickly that being small meant eating more water and more sand. The boats never quite sat right on her head. Logs seemed to grow between the start and end of a run. What she could do was move around people, help adjust the weight, see who was about to crack, and lean into them physically and verbally. On the mats, everything made sense again. The BUD/S close combat cadre mixed SEAL methods with wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and the kind of ugly, efficient striking that left no room for flashy forms. They pushed her. They targeted her. They made examples of her when she did well and when she didn't. Somewhere after Hell Week, an instructor with a face like gravel pulled her aside after grappling class. Delgado, he said, you keep this up, your size is going to be a problem for the people you fight, not for you. That was the closest thing to praise she got, so she kept it like a pebble in her pocket. On deployment with Team 7, she learned that nothing in training could capture the smell of a ship that had been cooking in the sun for months, or the way adrenaline made your hands so slick you could barely work a door handle. During a counter-smuggling op in the Gulf of Aden, boarding a rusted freighter at night, her rifle jammed in a narrow hallway at the exact wrong moment. The man coming at her had a knife. The corridor was too tight for anything fancy. Her body moved the way the dojo had taught it before her brain could catch up. Low block, close the distance, knee across his thigh to kill his base, elbow to the jaw, palm to the nose, then a leg sweep that sent them both crashing. The knife clattered against the bulkhead. The man stopped moving after the third strike. Later, sitting on the edge of a cot in the ship's infirmary getting butterfly strips for a cut on her forearm, her platoon chief said, Nice work in the funhouse, Fox. She'd blinked at him. Funhouse? Yeah, he said, shrugging. You look like you knew exactly what ride you were on. The call sign stuck. So did the awareness that karate wasn't a hobby she'd brought along. It was the skeleton under everything. Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Hale had his own skeletons. He'd gone into the Marine Corps straight out of a broken Arkansas town, traded a dead-end job and a drunk stepfather for sand and structure. He liked it enough to re-enlist. He liked Force Recon even more. It was the first place he'd ever been where being intense and a little obsessive counted as a feature, not a bug. Afghanistan had changed him. So had a deployment with a Marine Raider team that depended on a Navy element for comms and air. On one raid, a young Navy lieutenant in charge of coordinating support froze. Hale watched it happen in real time. The guy's eyes went wide. His fingers hovered over the radio. His jaw clenched. Incoming fire chewed up the wall over their heads. Someone screamed. Hale shouted for air in, for the grid, for anything. The lieutenant stared at his map and stammered. It took their enlisted comms, guy muscling him aside to get the 9-line out. One of Hale's Marines bled out in the dirt 3 minutes later. Officially, it wasn't anyone's fault. War was chaotic. The debrief used words like fog and friction. In Hale's head, the playback always paused on the moment the officer froze. So when command told him a SEAL lieutenant, another elite Navy officer, was coming to run their combatives block, he saw that useless, pale face in the dirt all over again. He wasn't going to let another blue-suited hero worshiper stand in front of his Marines untested. He was going to pull the mask off before anyone got hurt. Gunnery Sergeant, Master Sergeant Briggs said now, voice edged with warning. We talked about this. Yes, Master Sergeant, Hale said, eyes still on Sofia. We did. He took a few steps forward, boots loud on the mat. Ma'am, he said louder, you mind telling my Marines what makes you qualified to teach people who run toward gunfire for a living how to fight? There it was. The audience. The challenge. The implied you don't. Sofia set her sea bag down next to the wall. My quals are in the brief you got, she said. If they're not good enough for you, take it up with your CO. A couple Marines oat softly. Hale smiled without humor. See, that's the thing. Paper says a lot of things. Paper said a Navy lieutenant I worked with once could handle a radio on a hot night. Paper was wrong. The air tightened. You're mad at someone else, Gunny, she said evenly. I'm not him. Maybe not, Hale said. Or maybe you're the same problem with a smaller package. We don't know. He turned his head, raising his voice. We have a saying in this platoon, ma'am. Prove it or move it. The Marines answered as one. Reflex, prove it or move it, Gunny. Hale looked back at her. You want to stand up here and tell Recon how to scrap. You clear the same bar they do. You step on the same mat they bleed on. Briggs stepped forward, jaw tight. That's enough. This isn't. It's fine, Master Sergeant, Sofia said quietly, the same tone she'd used on every officer who tried to pull her out of something she'd volunteered for. What do you have in mind, Gunny? He spread his hands. Our standard evaluation. Shark Tank. 5 rounds, 1 minute each, fresh Marine every round. No gear except mouthguard and 4-ounce gloves. Any tap or clear dominant control ends the round. He gave her a slow once-over. We usually run it on Raiders trying out for the advanced course. Most of them aren't 5'2". A low chuckle rippled around the mats. Briggs swore under his breath. Delgado, you don't owe this smartass. I'll do it, Sofia said. Under one condition. Hale raised an eyebrow. Name it. I go last today, she said. You and your Marines are already warm. I'm not. Let them run their drills. Run your program. When they're tired, I'll step in cold. A different kind of sound passed through the room. Not laughter. Hale's jaw flexed. She just flipped his script in front of everyone. Deal, he said. You bail at any point. You walk off this mat. I don't want to hear a single word about SEAL karate games. You teach PowerPoint. We'll handle the rest. She nodded once. Understood. Briggs looked like he wanted to bash both their heads together, but he also knew when a train was already in motion. Fine, he growled. We do it safe. We do it controlled. Captain Hare signs off first, or no one goes near a mouthguard. And if I see one head kick, I end the whole circus myself. By 1600, you couldn't have fit another body into that gym without breaking fire code. The word SEAL versus Recon Shark Tank had moved fast. Marines leaned in the open doorways, perched on the tops of stacked mats, sat cross-legged on the floor. A couple of Navy corpsmen stood near the far wall with a med bag, watching everyone like they were already patients. Captain Harris, the company's safety officer, had grown more and more annoyed as the crowd grew. "All right," he shouted finally. "Here's how it's going to go. 5 rounds. 1 minute each. Fresh Marine every round. 4-ounce gloves. No joint locks past the point of control. No twisting heel hooks. No head kicks. You smash somebody in the spine, I will personally send you back to admin with a helmet and a coloring book." There was laughter, but it was tight. Sofia pulled a black rash guard on over her sports bra, rolled her shoulders, and cinched a pair of borrowed fight shorts tight over compression leggings. Her braid had been retied higher on her head to stay out of the way. She didn't bounce or shadowbox. She just walked to one corner of the mat and rolled her ankles, her wrists, neck side to side. Breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. She let the noise of the gym wash over her until it blurred. Her world narrowed to matte texture under bare feet, the stretch of the fabric across her shoulders, the way the air tasted. Hale picked his 5 with care. Sergeant Devers, rangy striker with a Muay Thai background. Corporal Singh, stocky grappler, the platoon's unofficial wrestling coach. Sergeant Tex Coleman, deceptively relaxed boxer who liked liver shots in a way that worried people. Staff Sergeant Almeida, judo black belt. And Hale himself. Harris stepped to center. "Delgado, you ready?" "Yes, sir." "Devers, you ready?" "Yes, sir." "Round 1. Begin." Devers came out southpaw, hands high, testing with sharp right jabs. They weren't playing. Not really. But there was intent behind them. Sofia didn't back straight up. She angled, weight light, over the balls of her feet, making him turn. His jab touched her once, twice, building rhythm. On the third, she slipped outside instead, pivoted, and dropped a shovel hook into the soft spot just above his hip as his arm retracted. Not full power. Enough. Devers' breath hitched. His stance wobbled. She didn't chase his head. She chased his base. Her lead leg slid behind his. Her shoulder bumped his chest. The floor met his back in a slap that echoed. She landed in Casa Gadami's scarf hold, her hips glued to his ribs, his head trapped between her arm and side. Her weight settled like a small, efficient anvil. Harris counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. "Stop." Devers slapped her side. "You weigh more than you look, ma'am," he wheezed. "Bones are heavy," she muttered, standing up. There were a few surprised grunts from the crowd. Round 2. Singh came in like a freight train, looking for a body lock. He got in deep, arms clamping around her waist, ribs compressing. For a half second, she felt her heels leave the mat. She didn't fight the lift. She shifted her hips, hooked one leg between his, and turned into him as they fell. They hit on their sides instead of her back. She latched onto his forearm, planted her foot on his hip, and spun for an armbar with the kind of muscle memory you only get from a childhood of being the smallest one in the room. She extended just to the point her own elbow once cracked when someone didn't stop. Singh tapped immediately, eyes wide. Harris slapped her shoulder. "Good. Off, off, off." And so it went. Tex landed the best shot of the Shark Tank, a liver hook that made her entire side go rubbery for a moment. She clinched instead of crumpling, forehead against his cheek, short knees peppering his legs until his stance degraded. She foot swept him from the clinch and took him out. Harris called it at 4 seconds this time. She'd earned the extra work. Almeida was dangerous. The first time he grabbed her GI sleeve, she realized he'd spent years practicing entries on hyper-compliant partners and months practicing them on angry Marines. He got a beautiful hip throw. She turned in midair and took the landing on her side instead of square on her back. Arm threaded between his legs before he could settle. Half guard. Not great. Not dead. He fought for pressure. She fought for angle. In the last seconds of the round, she managed to off-balance him enough to come up on top in his half guard. "Time!" Harris shouted. No winner. Reset. Her lungs burned now. Sweat rolled into the corners of her eyes. The old scar on her right shin throbbed from a check kick. Hale stepped onto the mat. He touched his gloves together once. No bow, but his eyes had lost some of their earlier contempt. "Ready?" Harris asked. "Yes, sir," they answered together. "Begin." Hale's jab felt like getting poked with a brick. His footwork carved off her exit angles faster than the others had. He pressured without overcommitting, making the mat feel smaller. He snapped a low kick in her thigh. It felt like a hot knife. She let the pain ride past instead of bracing against it. "You're slowing down, Lieutenant," he said. "You're not getting younger either, Gunny," she replied between breaths. He cracked a smile despite himself. He feinted another low kick. She dipped just enough to show she'd read it. He changed levels and shot for a double instead. Her hands found his shoulders, sprawling hips back, but he'd already driven through. They slammed into the mat with him on top in side control. The room erupted. This was the picture they'd all been waiting for. Weight crushed her ribs. His forearm ground against her jaw. Karate liked to talk about perfect stances and crisp strikes. None of that applied when 200 pounds of angry Marine was trying to melt you into vinyl. What did apply was the thing her mother had drilled into her while she was crying through leg cramps at 12. Don't fight the whole mountain. Chip at the edge. She didn't try to bench press him. She dug her right elbow in against his hip, created a sliver of space, then another. Her left knee squeaked up between the millimeter by millimeter. Hale tightened down, anticipating a full guard attempt. She didn't go for it. As his weight adjusted, she bridged hard into him, then rolled away, turning onto her knees instead of her back. For half a second, they were both on all fours, jockeying for front headlock. Her right arm threaded under his neck. Her left grabbed his tricep. She didn't cinch the choke. There wasn't time, and that hadn't been the goal. She used the grip to yank herself around behind him and slap both hooks in. Her chest plastered his back. She didn't sink the choke. She just laid her forearm across his jaw in a firm crossface and flattened him out. Harris was already counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Stop. The room exploded. Shouts, curses, laughter, disbelief. Hale slapped the mat once. Frustration, not protest. Then thumped her shin with his glove as she slid off. "Hell of a scramble, ma'am," he panted. "Your shot's good," she said, breathing hard. "If you chain into a knee tap when they stuff your head, it's nasty." Harris stepped in, raising his voice above the noise. "All right," he barked. "That's it. Shark Tank complete. Nobody died, nobody lost teeth. I call that a win." He turned to Hale. "Gunny." Hale knew what was coming. Front and center. Briggs added quietly, tone leaving no room for cleverness. Hale walked to face Sofia, sweat shining on his shaved head. "You ran your mouth in front of your Marines," Briggs said, voice low but carrying. "You drag your personal ghosts into my training area. You disrespected a guest instructor with a service record you hadn't even bothered to read. Fix it." Hale swallowed once. He looked at Sofia. "Lieutenant Delgado," he said, the words stiff but honest. "I was out of line. You proved you can handle this mat better than most people I've seen in here. I apologize for questioning your right to be here and for projecting my crap on you." Eyes around the room flicked between them. This was as much a test as the Shark Tank had been. Sofia wiped a trickle of sweat from her jaw with the back of one gloved hand. "I don't care about an apology for my ego, Gunnery Sergeant," she said, "but I'll take one for the example it sets." She let her gaze travel across the Marines watching. "You're mad at a Navy officer who choked when it mattered," she went on. "You should be. It cost you someone. That doesn't make every sailor you work with guilty. It makes you responsible for making damn sure the people around you don't choke. By training them, not by tearing them down in front of a crowd." Hale's jaw flexed, then eased. She continued, quieter. "I've watched good people fail in training. I've watched good people freeze on ops. It's not always about courage. Sometimes it's sheer overload. That doesn't make the consequences any lighter. But if we turn that into everyone from that uniform is trash, we're blind on our own flanks." Hale nodded slowly. "Roger that, ma'am. And for the record," she added, "nobody gave me anything because I'm small or because it looks good on a poster. The ocean doesn't care what you look like. Neither does Hell Week. Neither does a guy with a knife in a dark hallway. You either show up or you don't. She met his eyes. Same for you. Same for them. Briggs snorted. Well, he said, now that the group therapy portion is complete, Lieutenant, you still willing to teach my idiots some of that foot sweep witchcraft? Sophia's mouth quirked. As long as they're willing to be thrown by someone shorter than them. A roll of laughter moved through the room. Easier now. Class starts 0800 tomorrow, Briggs barked. Combatives block is now joint run. Lieutenant Delgado's word on the mat is law. Any Marine who wants to test it knows exactly where to stand. He pointed at the center square. Dismissed. 3 weeks later, the Recon platoon's morning looked different. The usual misery, sprints, pull-ups, sandbags, was still there, but now it flowed straight into structure drills. Footwork patterns stolen from karate kata and stripped down to practical movement. Angle entries over and over until calves burned. Pummeling in the clinch, then seamlessly adding in sweeps that dumped partners with embarrassing ease. Quit trying to muscle it, Sofia said for the 50th time that week, guiding a corporal's hips through a throwing motion. If you're tired and scared and carrying kit, you're not going to deadlift a dude in body armor. Steal his balance instead. Over time, the snark faded. Guys who'd laughed now asked questions. They stayed after to work on specific counters. Hale started barking corrections that aligned with her drills instead of against them. Delgado, on me, he'd yell. Show them what happens when they shoot lazy. She'd sprawl, spin, take the back. The watching Marines would make the same collective wince every time the losing man's chest hit the mat. After one brutal session, as bodies shuffled off the mats in various stages of bruised pride, a young corporal with freckles and a buzz cut hovered near Sofia. Ma'am, she said. Corporal Vance. Yeah, Vance. How do you not let it get in your head? Vance asked, people assuming, that you're only there because someone needed a woman in the photo, that you got a lighter version of the course. That kind of crap. It was almost word for word the question Sofia had asked an older female chief once, years ago, after a particularly ugly comment in the team room. She leaned back against the cage and considered. You don't have to pretend it doesn't bother you, she said finally. You just don't let that be the thing steering the car. You show up prepared. You outwork most of the people talking. You let time and performance do the arguing. Vance nodded, chewing on that. And you find people who see you as more than a checkbox, Sofia added. Hale gives you opportunities? Vance shrugged. He's hard, but fair. Mostly. If he's fair, you latch onto that, Sofia said. You prove him right when he takes a chance on you. You make his job of defending you easier. Vance's shoulders relaxed a fraction. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. After Vance jogged out, Hale drifted over, arms folded. He said, I've seen more clean sweeps in the last 10 days than I did all last cycle. Blame your guys, she said. They're obsessive. He snorted. For a moment, they stood in comfortable silence, watching two Marines stubbornly drilling the same angle entry for the 10th time. I was wrong about you, he said suddenly. No bravado, no shrug. Just fact. About SEALs? She asked lightly. He thought about that, then shook his head once. About thinking a badge was the problem. People are the problem, or the solution. She nodded. That's been my experience, too. That night, in her temporary quarters, Sofia sat on the edge of the bed and reached for the braided cord around her wrist. Red and white threads, faded and frayed. Her mother had tied it on her before she left for Great Lakes. So you remember where your root is? Aiko had said. Branches can go anywhere. Root stays. She touched the scar on her shin where the bone had microfractured when she was 16 because she'd kicked the Makiwara wrong and refused to stop. Karate, Bud/S, Recon, different worlds, same lesson. Control. Discipline. Show up. Do the work. Let other people talk. They'd wanted her to prove it. She'd done that. More importantly, she realized, sitting in the quiet, she was finally done trying to prove it to the voice in the back of her own head. The one that still sometimes whispered, small, lucky fluke. She smiled to herself, small and private. Prove it or move it, she murmured. She wasn't going anywhere.